Eli Morgan had always been the quiet one. In a family that worshipped charisma over competence, he was the still water running deep, too deep for his father, Harold Morgan, to ever really notice. The Morgans owned Morgan Instruments, a mid-sized but long-standing medical device company based in the heart of Chicago. For 3 generations, the business had passed from father to son like a sacred torch, each heir expected to carry the name with pride, polish it with success, and protect it from mediocrity. Eli, the eldest son, had the pedigree and the brains. He graduated top of his class in computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon, then went on to get a master's in bioinformatics. While his peers jumped into flashy startups in Silicon Valley, Eli returned home to work in the dusty, outdated R&D lab of the family business. He didn't complain. He never did. He just coded, tinkered, optimized, often alone, often unseen. But in the Morgan household, visibility was everything. Zach, the younger brother, was a different breed entirely. He had no technical chops, barely scraped by at a third-tier business school, and had the attention span of a caffeinated squirrel. But Zach had something Eli didn't: presence. He could light up a boardroom with a joke, turn awkward investor meetings into cocktail parties, and somehow make empty pitches sound like revolutions. Their father adored him. "That's leadership," Harold would say proudly, watching Zach fumble through a presentation Eli had built from scratch. "That's a Morgan." Eli watched from the shadows as Zach rose like helium in the company, buoyed not by merit but momentum. Promotions came fast, too fast. Within 2 years, Zach was titled Director of Innovation, a title Eli never applied for because, well, no one had even told him it was open. He had been busy fixing a serious flaw in their flagship neural scanner, a device that misread certain brainwave patterns under stress, an error that could lead to fatal misdiagnosis. His patch prevented a potential lawsuit that could have bankrupted the company. It was never mentioned in the family newsletter. The crisis came like a quiet storm, slow, creeping, and almost dignified in its inevitability. The core diagnostic device that had put Morgan Instruments on the map a decade ago was now being outpaced by leaner, smarter, AI-driven alternatives. Hospitals began hesitating. Contracts slowed. Industry whispers turned into boardroom murmurs. The writing was on the wall, but no one dared say it out loud. Except Eli. He had seen the signs months in advance: an uptick in error logs, competitors filing patents disturbingly similar to the company's old architecture. He stayed late, combed through diagnostic data, sketched reconfiguration models on the back of cafeteria napkins, while Zach traveled to Dubai for a health tech symposium and posted champagne selfies from hotel rooftops. Eli buried himself in code. There were no fancy presentations, no hashtags, just long nights and cold coffee. And then he cracked it. Eli developed an adaptive algorithm that not only optimized the outdated diagnostic device, but gave it predictive capabilities no competing product had yet achieved. It didn't just analyze, it anticipated. It could detect early signs of neurological degradation weeks before symptoms appeared. Clinical partners ran the tests. The results were flawless. The algorithm could have saved the company. It did save the company. But Eli didn't save himself. At the quarterly shareholders meeting, held in a glossy downtown ballroom where the lighting was warmer than the people, Harold Morgan took the stage. His silver hair, manicured and perfect, gleamed beneath the chandeliers. Zach stood at his side, smirking in that way Eli knew too well. Harold cleared his throat and said the words Eli would never forget. This breakthrough was made possible thanks to Zach's relentless pursuit of innovation. His vision for the future is exactly what Morgan Instruments stands for. The applause was thunderous. Eli sat in the back row, out of view, still wearing his company-issued badge and his old corduroy blazer. For a moment, he thought perhaps he had imagined it, that surely his father would follow up with a line about the team or even a nod to engineering support. But nothing came, not even a glance. It wasn't just omission. It was erasure. The next Monday, Eli's ID no longer granted access to the R&D wing. His desk had been moved, without explanation, to a back room in the technical support division. No window, no natural light. His new title? Systems Integration Specialist. Meanwhile, Zach got a new office, a new title, Director of Innovation, and a press release featuring a photo of him holding the prototype Eli had debugged himself. The caption read, Zach Morgan unveils next-generation diagnostics powered by proprietary Morgan AI. Proprietary. Eli read the word over and over like it might unravel if he stared long enough. There was no confrontation, no yelling match. Eli wasn't built for theatrics. But something in him, something sacred, fractured. He began to question everything. Not just his role in the company, but his role in the family. His worth. His place. It wasn't about ambition. He never cared about climbing. Never needed applause. But this was theft in broad daylight. It was betrayal, sanctioned by blood and business alike. And yet, he kept showing up. He fixed bugs, improved scripts, helped junior engineers troubleshoot faulty interfaces. He answered emails nobody else wanted to touch. Day in, day out, he worked. Invisible, indispensable, undervalued. One evening, as he stayed late to help QA test an internal tool Zach had promised but failed to deliver, a junior developer named Mia hesitated at his office door. "You okay, Eli?" she asked gently. "I mean, this isn't right. Everyone knows that was your code." He looked up, smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter," he said. But it did. It mattered in the silence of his apartment at night, where old family portraits still hung above his desk, mocking him with frozen smiles. It mattered in every meeting where Zach took credit for things he didn't understand, in every lunch Eli ate alone while board members laughed too loudly across the hall. It mattered in the ache he couldn't name but couldn't ignore either. One night, he opened his laptop, not to fix something, but to build something. A private sandbox. A new algorithm. A fresh name. A concept beyond diagnostics. Beyond Morgan. He wasn't sure what it would become, only that it had to be his. Entirely, unapologetically his. Because sometimes, survival isn't about being seen. It's about knowing who you are, even when no one else does. Eli didn't storm out. There were no slammed doors, no fiery speeches, no last-minute boardroom drama. Just a quiet morning. He walked into his office, the one without windows, without light, without dignity, shut down his computer, and gathered the few things that still felt like his. A black notebook, a fountain pen, and a photo of his mom from before she got sick, back when she still called him my little inventor. No one noticed him leave. That somehow hurt the most. Before stepping into the elevator, he typed one last message and sent it to his father's inbox. No greeting. No sign-off. Just one line. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. He turned off his phone after that. For 2 weeks, Eli disappeared. Friends texted, co-workers asked around. His father didn't respond. Zach posted another LinkedIn article about innovation culture. No one mentioned Eli, but something was brewing in that silence. In a repurposed auto shop on the south side of Chicago, walls still smelling faintly of gasoline and metal, Eli met with 2 former classmates. Priya, a hardware genius who once built a portable ECG monitor from old gaming consoles, and Marco, a machine learning prodigy who had walked away from Google after calling it too safe. They met every night at 7 p.m. The coffee was bitter, the heaters were broken, but the ideas? Electric. They called it NeuroForge, a new frontier where AI didn't just assist in medical diagnostics. It evolved with each case, learned from anomalies, and predicted with a level of precision that bordered on intuitive. Eli wasn't interested in improving old machines anymore. He wanted to forge something entirely new. In the beginning, no one listened. Hospitals hesitated. Investors ghosted. Even Priya's parents asked if she was sure she didn't want to just go back to Medtronic. But the code kept getting better, cleaner, smarter. It learned to detect neurological deterioration weeks before physical symptoms, flag early stages of ALS, even hint at rare genetic disorders through speech pattern analysis. It was frighteningly effective. Then came the break. An anonymous tip, Eli never found out who sent it, led to a demo opportunity at a neuroscience conference in Boston. The organizers didn't know who he was. They didn't care. They gave him a slot at 9 a.m., day 3, just after the breakfast muffins and just before the sponsored coffee break. Eli didn't expect anyone to show up. But by 9:10, the room was full. By 9:25, it was standing room only. By 9:45, he had 5 different neurologists lining up to shake his hand, 3 offering pilot studies, and 1 man, tall, quiet, suit too expensive for the event, who simply handed over a card and said, "We should talk." 6 weeks later, NeuroForge got FDA breakthrough designation. The buzz was no longer underground. Scientific journals began calling it a paradigm shift in early neurodegenerative diagnostics. MIT Tech Review ran a feature. The Wall Street Journal used the word disruptive. And then the man in the expensive suit came back with a check. $12.8 million. Series A, closed in 48 hours. Valuation? Confidential. Suddenly, they had offices in Palo Alto and Berlin. A growing team of engineers and clinicians. Eli still wore the same black hoodie and still refused press interviews. When Forbes reached out for a feature, his only reply was, "The work matters, not the people." But that didn't stop the whispers. The industry knew. Word traveled. Some said he was a genius. Some said he was lucky. Others said he was the kid who walked away from his family empire and built something better. They didn't know the truth. He didn't walk away. He was erased. But now he was rewriting the narrative, in lines of code, in FDA approvals, in lives saved. And while his father still hadn't called, and Zach was still doing panels about family legacy, Eli was somewhere else entirely. Not louder, just undeniable. As Neuroforge soared, rapidly becoming a tech unicorn in the healthcare sector, the downfall of Morgan Instruments was nothing short of a spectacle. What had once been a proud family legacy, a name synonymous with cutting-edge medical technology, was now teetering on the edge of collapse. The company's attempts to modernize their aging products fell short, and their customer base, once loyal and vast, began to dwindle. No one knew how to fill the void left by Eli, the visionary who had quietly optimized their outdated products and propelled them forward in ways no one else could. But without him, Morgan Instruments quickly lost its edge. Zach, the golden boy, had no answers. He had been thrust into a role far beyond his capabilities, promoted to Director of Innovation, despite his lack of technical depth. The pressure was mounting, and Zach, unprepared for the magnitude of his responsibilities, floundered. He spent more time managing the optics, ensuring the press releases sounded hopeful, than addressing the critical issues plaguing the company. His charisma, once an asset, became a liability as he fumbled through meetings and failed to engage with the engineering team. The board, once enamored by his charm, grew increasingly disillusioned with his inability to deliver. The final blow came when Morgan Instruments lost a major contract with a prestigious medical institution, an institution that had once been a flagship client. The reason was clear. Their products were outdated, their technology lagging behind. The board scrambled to cut costs and tried to salvage what little reputation they had left, but it was too late. The company was losing money fast, and with each passing day, it became more apparent that bankruptcy was imminent. Then came the scandal. Morgan Instruments was under investigation for intellectual property theft. A whistleblower from within the company had come forward, revealing that a key piece of technology the company was now pitching as their own bore striking similarities to the algorithms Eli had developed years before. It wasn't an outright copy, but it was close enough to raise red flags, especially with the way the technology had been reworked under Zach's leadership. As the media frenzy exploded, Zach was thrust into the spotlight, his every misstep scrutinized. The company's public relations team tried to salvage what little they could, but the truth was undeniable. Without Eli, Morgan Instruments had become a shell of its former self, and now it was mired in scandal. The worst part for Zach? The comparison to Eli couldn't be avoided. As Morgan Instruments floundered, Eli's Neuroforge had become a beacon of hope. The tech community watched in awe as Neuroforge, under Eli's quiet leadership, continued to break barriers in medical diagnostics with AI-driven solutions that promised to revolutionize the industry. Investors were clamoring to get in, and healthcare professionals praised the accuracy and potential of the product. Meanwhile, Zach's attempts to right the ship at Morgan Instruments were met with constant failure. As the investigation into Morgan Instruments deepened, it became clear that Zach would not be able to pull the company back from the brink. With mounting pressure and a crumbling legacy on his shoulders, Zach was left to wonder what went wrong. All the while, Eli's success stood as a reminder of what could have been, and the cruel irony of it all was not lost on anyone. Eli had built something new and visionary, while Zach had inherited a sinking ship, one he simply couldn't save. The fall of Morgan Instruments was inevitable, and its story would forever be intertwined with the rise of Neuroforge. As Morgan Instruments teetered on the edge of collapse, Eli stood at a crossroads that no one had expected him to face. His father, Mr. Morgan, and his younger brother Zach had come to a realization that they couldn't ignore any longer. The company they had built was crumbling, and in their desperation, they turned to Eli. He was the key to their survival. The technology he had developed, which had allowed his own startup, Neuroforge, to thrive, could be the lifeline they needed to stay afloat. The message was clear: let's collaborate, they said. Let's come back together, like a family. It was a desperate plea, one that showed just how much they had underestimated him in the past. When Eli received the message, he didn't feel anger, nor did he feel triumph. The years of struggle, the tension, and the feeling of being overlooked had left him numb to any emotional response. The only thing that mattered now was clarity. His father, still clinging to the outdated notion that family bonds were more important than innovation, and Zach, who had never truly recognized Eli's potential, now saw an opportunity to latch onto his success. They had failed, and they were trying to use him as a last-ditch effort to save what remained of their business. Eli had already made his decision. His success was not a commodity to be sold or bartered with. He had not worked tirelessly to build something meaningful just to have it become a backup plan for a company that had never valued his contributions. He had made something real, something that was his. His worth was not defined by his last name or his place in a family legacy. The meeting was arranged, and when Eli walked into the room, there was no bitterness, no malice in his heart. The room was heavy with expectation, the air thick with the desperation of his father and Zach. They had come to offer him something that they thought he would jump at, a chance to sell his technology or join forces once again. But Eli was no longer that young man who had silently hoped for validation. He had outgrown that need. "I didn't build this to be your backup plan," Eli said calmly, his voice steady. The words hung in the air, slicing through the tension like a sharp knife. It was not a rejection, but a statement of finality. He didn't need their approval anymore. He had built something with his own hands, on his own terms, and no amount of family pressure would make him return to a place where he had always been sidelined. Eli's words weren't just a refusal to collaborate, they were a declaration of independence. The choice was simple. His work was his own, and no one was going to take that away from him. It was a clear line in the sand. He was no longer a backup option for them. He had found his own way, and it was time for him to move forward, leaving the past behind. And so, Eli did what no one, especially his father and Zach, could have expected. He bought the old headquarters of Morgan Instruments, the very place that had once been the symbol of his failure, where his talents were ignored in favor of his brother's charm and their family's legacy, was now in his hands. This wasn't just a business transaction. It was a symbolic act, a reclaiming of power, a statement that he was no longer bound by the constraints of family expectations. Eli didn't just buy the building. He transformed it. What was once a place that stifled his innovation was now the beating heart of his new company, Neuroforge. The space that had once been a prison to his ideas was now a state-of-the-art research center, a place where creativity and progress could thrive without the suffocating presence of nepotism. The legacy of Morgan Instruments had failed because it relied on outdated thinking and nepotism, while Neuroforge was founded on innovation, expertise, and a willingness to push the boundaries of what was possible. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially Mr. Morgan and Zach. They had never believed in Eli. They had always seen him as the quiet, technical one who wasn't suited for the family business. But now, they were forced to watch as the company they had built with their own hands crumbled, while Eli's vision, something they had once dismissed, became the industry standard. The tables had turned, and the very space they had once controlled was now the symbol of Eli's triumph. The world watched as Eli's vision for Neuroforge unfolded. It wasn't just a success story. It was a reminder of the power of innovation, of the importance of believing in yourself, even when others didn't. And as Eli stood in the center of the building that had once been Morgan Instruments' headquarters, now transformed into the nerve center of his own company, he couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to himself that he could build something meaningful, something lasting, on his own terms. He didn't need their validation. He didn't need their approval. What mattered was that he had succeeded on his own. And now, the world would know just how far he had come, from the overlooked son dismissed by his family, to the founder of one of the most innovative companies in the tech industry. Eli had won, not just the battle for success, but the war for his own self-worth and freedom. Eli didn't seek revenge. He didn't need to flaunt his success or parade his victories in front of those who had once dismissed him. He had spent enough years in the shadows, trying to prove his worth through his silence and his work, but now, he no longer felt the need to shout. The success of Neuroforge spoke for itself. His company wasn't built on the backs of others or through petty triumphs. It was built on relentless dedication, unwavering faith in his vision, and a refusal to compromise. He didn't have to fight anyone. He just had to keep moving forward, doing what he had always believed in. And in doing so, he became undeniable. With each passing day, Neuroforge grew stronger, its innovative technology redefining the standard in the medical industry. The world was taking notice, and Eli's name, once relegated to the background of his father's company, now stood as a beacon of brilliance. He wasn't the quiet, overlooked son anymore. He was a leader, a pioneer, a force to be reckoned with. His contributions weren't just a flicker of genius that could be ignored or overshadowed. They were a foundation on which the future would be built. His vision, his ingenuity, had turned a simple idea into a groundbreaking reality, and no one could deny that. Eli's success didn't need to be loud. It didn't need to be flashy. The accolades, the recognition, and the financial backing were all secondary to the work itself. It was never about proving anyone wrong. It was always about proving to himself that he was capable of more. Now, as Neuroforge continued to thrive, Eli had found a quiet, unspoken satisfaction. His work was a testament to his values, to his integrity, and to the relentless pursuit of excellence that had been buried under the weight of family expectations for so long. And while Eli wasn't out to exact vengeance, his actions were a subtle and undeniable form of payback. He didn't need to confront those who had wronged him. His success alone had done that for him. The years passed, and with them came the inevitable changes. The world of business is fickle, and fortunes can change in an instant. For Eli, his triumph was not in the fleeting victories, but in the endurance of his vision. Neuroforge stood strong, an unstoppable force in the medical tech world, while Morgan Instruments, the company that once held so much promise, continued to wither. Its attempts to remain relevant had failed. Their technological edge had dulled, their market share dwindled, and they had been overtaken by the very innovations Eli had once dreamed up, only to be dismissed for. The story ended not with a triumphant speech or a fiery confrontation. It ended with an image of Eli's father, Mr. Morgan, standing outside the old headquarters of Morgan Instruments. The building, once a symbol of a family's legacy, now stood silent as the world outside passed it by. Eli's name was etched on a new sign, replacing the old one that had once proudly displayed his father's name. The contrast was stark, and as Mr. Morgan stood there, staring at the sign, he couldn't help but feel a wave of emotions crash over him. He was silent, his thoughts lost in the realization of what had been lost, of what had slipped through his fingers, and what had been taken from him without a single word being spoken. The name, Eli Morgan, gleamed in the sunlight, bold and unyielding, a reminder that in the end, it wasn't about titles or legacy. It was about the work, the vision, and the courage to pursue it. Eli had built something that no one could take away from him, and no amount of past mistakes or regret could change that. As Mr. Morgan stood frozen in that moment, he understood that the world had moved on, and Eli, finally, had found his place in it, not as a son in his father's shadow, but as a leader in his own right. The story of Eli Morgan is a powerful reminder that success is not bound by family approval, social status, or outdated traditions. In a world where expectations are often set by those who can't see beyond their own biases, Eli's journey teaches us that you don't need anyone's permission to achieve greatness. When they wouldn't give him a seat at the table, he didn't beg for one. Instead, he built his own damn table, one that was bigger, bolder, and more innovative than anything they could ever offer. He didn't need validation, and he didn't need to play by their rules. His success wasn't about revenge. It was about redefining what success truly means on his own terms. Sometimes, the loudest protest is in the silence, the refusal to settle, the decision to rise above the noise. Eli's quiet rebellion was his most powerful weapon, showing the world that you don't have to follow the path others lay for you. You create your own. His story is for anyone who has ever been told they weren't enough or that they didn't belong. It's a reminder that your value isn't determined by others, and your destiny is yours to shape.